If you just tuned in, I'm Cheryl Mizell, and this is Community Voices on 99 JAMZ. My guests are Charlene Bowie, a life coach, founder, and CEO of Coffee Break with Charlie; Carolyn Lourdes, founder, president of Save Outlet Incorporated; Teresa DeShilo, founder and executive director of the Trauma Resolution Center; and Sherry Patterson, author of Mad Life of an NBA Wife. Our hashtag for today's show is Stop Domestic Violence, and you can follow me at Cheryl Mizell and join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. So let's just talk about what is a definition of domestic violence. What distinguishes that from other violence? I mean, what makes it domestic violence? Who can answer that? Carolyn?
Domestic violence is, you can be in a relationship, whether it's with a female or a male, same-sex relationships, and a person uses excessive force or a form of power and control over you.
Against your will.
Against your will. That is the definition that I came up with, and I think it's pretty much legitimate.
I agree.
Charlene?
One of the things that I would like our listening audience to know, because we have a young audience, is that women ages 20 to 24 are at the greatest risk for non-fatal intimate partner violence. The other thing is 600,000 to 6 million women are victims of domestic violence each year. Every 2 minutes somewhere in America, a woman is abused. 1 out of 6 boys will be sexually abused before age 16. So we have to truly be aware of who our children are involved with, be aware of family members, neighbors. It is not a subject matter that we just kind of brush up under the carpet and pretend that it does not exist. And one of the things that I find in dealing with domestic violence, domestic abuse, whether it's emotional, physical, sexual, what have you, is families are still keeping it a secret.
Yeah, they're not
talking that
Nothing
it does not exist.
Right.
And one of the things that we do as advocates is that we teach them to learn how to recognize their signs, because as Teresa said, is that in the beginning, everything comes from something. You don't wake up one day and say, well, I'm going to be with an abuser. It's a learned behavior pattern.
Absolutely.
And from that, you have to recognize the warning signs. You have to recognize the signs within yourself as being someone that attracts someone of abuse. And then you have to pay attention to the signs that your abuser has and not ignore them. So that's a part of what we do. It's teaching and educating how to recognize the warning signs, because so many people are affected. And one of the things that they don't acknowledge is the emotional abuse. We all focus in on the violent aspect of it, but no one is talking about the emotional abuse. I did a workshop once, and this woman had been married 29 years. She did not know she was in an emotional relationship with her ex-husband until the information that I had given her. When that workshop was over, she came over and she just began to cry and bawl about how she did not recognize the signs. So us as advocates, one of the things that we must absolutely do is inform those who are onlookers, those who are connected to family members that are being abused, so there's not so much rejection or looking down on women for having been abused by...
but embracing them.
Right.
And
lift them up.
And lift them up.
Yes. Are you saying that even though she had divorced this man, she was still being abused emotionally in a relationship with him?
Both. She had been with him 29 years, and he would say derogatory things to her. He would call her names. He would withdraw money, withhold money from her, told her when she could drive the car and when she couldn't. And she did not know that she was being controlled because he was not hitting on her. And many times, because a woman is not physically abused, she does not recognize emotional abuse as abuse.
Teresa.
And actually, one of the things we know from research done, that emotional abuse can be far more impactful than physical abuse, because physical abuse is kind of easy to say that's wrong, that's bad, but the emotional abuse can be more insidious, where a person doesn't necessarily know they're getting abused, and somehow they buy into that there's something wrong with them, or they're, he's saying there's something wrong with me, or I've done something wrong, and maybe I have. And women tend to be the pleasers. Women tend to be the one who want relationship. Women tend to be the ones who define themselves through relationship. So they take this to heart and look at this and adapt this and adopt this, and then think that there's something wrong with me, and you kind of stay in the flow of it. Somebody told me this lesson years ago. ago when I was with my emotionally abusive ex-husband. She said, I think God speaks to us in very simple ways. Basically, if we're on the right track, we're happy. And if we're on the wrong track, we're unhappy.
Right.
But you know how long after that it took me to divorce this guy? I mean, what is it about us that we need to suffer?
Carolyn?
I used to be the same way. Women are emotional creatures, and we're always looking for love because we're naturally nurturers. Mm-hmm. And so we nurture so much that we expect the same in return. So sometimes you get caught up in a relationship, as I'm speaking for myself. I was 14 when I first started experiencing domestic violence. At such a tender age, you don't recognize the signs. And that's why my mission in life is to really educate our youth on the signs of domestic violence.
That's huge. That's very huge.
Charlene?
I like to give statistics because when we tell our stories, people hear our stories and think, oh, that's just her story.
Right.
But
This is
when
true.
we give them statistics, numbers of
Objectively.
the people that are being affected, nearly 74% of Americans personally know someone who is or has been a victim of domestic violence. 30% of Americans say they know a woman who has been physically abused. So when those types of numbers, 74% is extremely high.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that means somewhere, each time we are inside of a room with someone, one of those women
Somebody
have been
knows.
abused.
Exactly.
Right.
And what we have to do also is to learn not to say trigger words.
Right.
And many people don't know what the trigger words is because there is no face to domestic violence. It affects women from all walks of life,
Amen.
no matter what your age bracket may be. It affects those who are young. It affects us who are older. And one of the things that we have to do is be able to identify how to support women who are in abuse. And this is the thing that I hear most. I would never be with a man that would abuse me, but you would be with a man that cheats on you.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
What's the difference?
Yeah.
It's
Same
still
thing.
violating
Right.
your person. It
Your
still
trust.
affects your self-esteem. So one of the things that we have to do is you don't say things like that because you don't know who's a victim. And what
Right.
you're telling that person who is a victim that you don't know, you're telling them, I'll never go to her for help.
Exactly.
Right.
I'll never go to
And
her
it will
to
keep
ask
her. It
questions.
will
Shut
keep
down.
her from
And so
coming
what we have to
you.
do is learn what not to say that
Right.
we can help those who are, us who are onlookers, help those who are victims.
Right. So
Carolyn?
statistically speaking, studies show that they suggest that there's 10 million children witness from some form of domestic violence annually. And those numbers alone are staggering. 10 million? That's a very high number.
Teresa?
And we know that children who witness violence also develop depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder from the witnessing. And there's a very powerful study called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study that was done out of Center for Disease Control in Kaiser Permanente. An awesome study. Everybody should know this because it tracks people from the 1940s who had insurance then through to recent times where they did an extensive survey asking about what they witnessed violence or were victims of violence, sexual abuse, incarcerated parent. There's 10 of these different things. And they found that kids, the more of those that a kid lived with, now as adults, they had more illness, they had more substance abuse, they had teen pregnancies, they harder to keep a job, physical illnesses, amazing array of stuff that correlates with the amount of violence or abuse they witnessed or experienced as a kid.
Sherry?
I can speak on that because my kids witnessed a lot of abuse with me. Once you are a parent like that, that's going through something like that, it's the most humiliating thing in your life because now you have to do something because you don't want your children to be future perpetuators. You have to stop it. You have to get your kids out of that from seeing that. And it was really, really hard. I'm still going through a lot of it today with my oldest daughter. She do not have a relationship with her father because of it. And we've been through the counseling and, it's still a process. And, I don't think she'll ever completely forget what she saw, all of them. You can have 4 kids. You can have 2 kids. Some of them are just better at dealing with certain things than others.
Teresa?
They also shouldn't need to have a relationship with a former abuser. Yeah, that's one of the things I don't understand from court, just that the insistence that a child have a relationship with somebody who is either abused them or has witnessed the abuse. Why is it so mind-blowing to think that a child doesn't want to have a relationship with an offending parent, and then the mother gets accused of parental alienation? I mean,
Absolutely.
It gets really nutty out there.
It's really bad.
But it's really understandable that a kid would not want to to have a relationship with an abusive parent. And unless that parent did such incredible work on him or herself that
if there's no rehabilitation, forget it.
Yeah, exactly. And rehabilitation is possible, and also
key.
It's key. It is possible, and it is key. And quite honestly, do you know that at least I think 80% of those who abuse witnessed or were abused as kids?
Yes.
So that is the other thing too. Because I'm also onto. I really would like to have it all resolved. So if somebody who is stuck in that, see, the other thing Divine has brought me, because I really had kind of the extreme domestic violence view in terms of guys who did that or women who did that. But I got brought people who, especially this one man who I'm thinking of, who was tortured by the fact that he had a reaction where he would be physically restraining or would do something to his wife. It drove him nuts. Wow. So he was like full time trying to get himself handled. So I got introduced to that kind of a thing too. And you can't throw him out. You know what I mean? And you can't reject him because he's really trying.
All right.
If somebody truly, truly wants to resolve, has totally owned what he or she has done, I did it,
Thank you.
I am really sorry, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make it up and make myself become a better person.
Absolutely.
So if that happens, but I'm also have a lot of compassion for the person who does that, because you look at their past and you'll see that they were victims. So, but unless that happens, forget about it. You have to protect yourself, you have to protect your kids, and kids should not be forced to have a relationship with an offending parent who hasn't done
Teresa,
it.
it's a cycle. It's really a cycle. And these men or women, whoever is the batterer, they're not physically getting rehabilitated.
Right.
All they're doing is separating or divorcing and moving from one woman to another and affecting so many lives, so many different kids and families, and it's sad.
It is sad.
Our hashtag for today's show is Stop Domestic Violence. You can follow me at Cheryl Mizell and join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. My guests this morning are Charlene Bowie, life coach, founder, and CEO of Coffee Break with Charlie; Carolyn Lourdes, founder, president of Safe Outlet Incorporated; Teresa DeShilo, founder and executive director of the Trauma Resolution Center; and Sherry Patterson, author of Mad Life of an NBA Wife.